We have on my man, Mr. Ryan Levesque. We talk about some of the economic forces, the environment factors, and the existential crises with AI taking place that is causing this convergence for us human beings to return to real. Let's dive into this episode of the Happiest of Podcast.
You want blissful balance in your personal and professional life? Great. What's up, guys? My name is Carrie Jack, and I want to help you happy hustle a life you love, one full of passion, purpose, and positive impact. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur, a professional model / actor, a digital marketing specialist, a podcast host, author, a biohacker, an eco warrior, a martial artist, a hippie cowboy, and a humanitarian. My goal is to educate, inspire, and entertain you to live a life of passion, purpose, and positive impact. It is time to happy hustle your dream reality.
All right, my brother, Mr. Ryan Levesque, welcome to the Happiest Podcast, man. I am super stoked to rock the mic with you.
Carrie, I am so honored to be here and been looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, man. I mean, we just had a heck of a pre-chat, so we should have probably recorded it. But nonetheless, you and I are very similar in nature, definitely, very aligned in many regards. But you are a 7-time Inc. 5000 CEO and founder. You're a 2-time national #1 best-selling author. You generated over $100 million in revenue and have successfully sold 2 of your companies. And you got a new book coming out that I'm super excited to talk about. You're also a husband. You're a father. You're a happy hustler. We're also part of Front Row Dads together. And man, I'm just honored to know you and to have you on the mic. So looking forward to having a great chat on all things entrepreneurship, happy hustling, your new book, The Return to Real, and unpacking some of that. But before we get into all that good stuff, Ryan, what is something interesting about yourself that not too many people know?
That's a great question. I'd say something that not a whole lot of people know is that we raise and grow about 80% of the food that we consume as a family on our farm here. And I can talk more about that if there's interest around that. It's been a journey because I didn't grow up as a farmer. I wasn't born into a farming family, but I learned this way of life as an adult, and it's been incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're living many people's dream because, there's this, I think, I don't know what to call it, maybe a uprising of independence, will you? Where people want to know where their food is coming from. They want to be closely connected to the land. And there's this divergence of city living to more country living. I mean, I live in Montana for that reason, but you're growing 80% of your food. That's pretty awesome. What would you say has been the most unexpected lesson of that journey?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I would say there's certain aspects to raising food that have proven to be more challenging than I think we originally thought. And then other aspects that have been maybe less challenging. Like we were able to get to our goal faster than I thought it would take us to get there. I had a 3-year goal. I wanted to get to 30% in year 1, 50% in year 2, and then 80% in year 3. And we got to 80% in year 1 of our journey. It was an ambitious goal, but we pushed hard. Like in our first year on our property, on our site, we planted about 500 fruit trees, nut trees, and berry bushes. We raised cattle, we raised pigs, we did 100 meat birds that with my family, we processed on site. So
you guys processed all of them?
We processed them all on site.
Whoa!
We had help from a neighbor farmer, but we did them all ourselves. We did hogs, we did bees. We had 48 beehives.
Damn!
With the help of a neighbor, about 1,000 maple trees on the property. So between the maple syrup and the honey, we were able to produce 100% of our sweetener on farm.
Let's go.
Our pork, chicken, eggs. We raise trout as well. So we have
Do you?
ponds. Yeah, so we've got a trout pond. So between our chicken, hogs, the trout, and our beef, we were able to get 100% of our protein on farm. And then 100% of our fat, because we just render the lard from the pigs, the tallow from the cows. So we're able to kind of get off seed oil. And so when you do that, like that's a big percentage of your calories right there
Right.
before we even touch on any veg, like before we touch
Yeah.
on annual production garden and like growing your own greens and herbs. And but we did a lot of that as well. Yeah, now like we're in an interesting part of the cycle in the season as we speak, where I just did we just planted uh, 200 bed feet of onions yesterday. We
Wow.
planted about 400 feet bed feet of squash and root vegetables, so mostly carrots. We got 400 feet of potatoes that are going to go in the ground in a few days. So between potatoes, onions, root vegetables like carrots and parsnips, which we have a root cellar where we keep everything in the
Oh,
winter.
cool.
So we're still like right now when we record this conversation, we're in June. We're eating last year's potatoes right now as we
Oh,
speak.
yeah.
So potatoes that we harvested last fall, we're in June
Wow.
and we're still eating that. We finished our onions, finished our carrots, but we're just wrapping up our potatoes. And I just had my last winter squash, butternut squash last week. So like when you get into this way of life, it's incredibly rewarding, and I think it's a metaphor for a principle that I think is really interesting that you and I kind of touched on. We didn't talk about explicitly, which is collapsing the layers of life. Like we have so many layers between us and the thing that we're ultimately trying to get at, and
Yeah.
a lot of that shows up in abstraction, simulation, experiencing life by proxy through a screen. Like, it's cool that you and I are having this conversation. It'd be a lot cooler if I
Yeah.
was up in Montana or if you were over at our place in
Right.
Vermont and we're having this chat in person.
Around a campfire, even better.
Around a campfire. Yeah. It's like, what your business is all about and what
Yeah.
your life is all about. But we live so much of our life through abstraction, and it's in our business life, it's in our personal life as well. Like you've got, Uber Eats that picks up the food from the restaurant that then gets that food from a produce truck that's shipped across the country, some cases on a ship or an airplane, shipped ingredients halfway across the world. And you're so many layers removed from the original food that came out of the ground.
Right.
And like we're kind of recording this conversation right now, and I've got like dirt all in my fingernails. Like
Nice.
it's not pretty, but I just spent 4 hours doing work on our property. Took a dip in one of our ponds in nature's cold plunge.
Yeah.
Threw on this shirt, and here we are talking right now. And I think that there's a movement happening in the world, and it's the principles that you talk about in your book and in your work. And it's a core thesis in my upcoming book, The Return to Real, which is that which is good for your body and for you personally is actually best for you and your business as well. That the world has shifted where there's a gaping void that people are desiring more of this real and less of the abstraction. And the question is, how do we adapt? How do we modify our businesses? How do we change so we can satisfy this demand and at the same time be able to live our best life, because it's ultimately best for us as human beings living in the bodies that we were born with.
Amen to all that. So much to unpack there. First of all, I'm jealous that you got to take a natural cold plunge in your pond, butt naked. He told me, for the record, that's freedom right there, people. And then he just hops on the pod and ready to rock. That's happy hustling. So love that. And I mean, it really is this return to real that I think our souls crave intuitively.
Totally.
And many people don't even know what they're missing, but they know something's missing, right? And you have a beautiful way of articulating it, especially through your newsletter. And I know this upcoming book, you define it as a counterculture response to the dehumanizing effects of modern life, right? Which is a movement towards what's grounded, what's embodied and meaningful, because the real is rare. And you know what? I talk about this with like the gurus online, the fake gurus. We were like standing in front of a rented Lambo, like, I just got out this jet, I'm on my Lambo now. It's like, show me the paperwork, buddy, because it's just BS. And I think intuitively, again, we know that form of marketing is a little icky and scammy, whatnot, but people still desire material things. And I think someone like you who has had the first mountain success, you had the material thing, but then you come back to center and you realize again what's really important, you know, family, getting close to uh, your food source, and just really being collapsing the layers of life into something that is super purposeful. That's again what the happy hustle is all about, putting the happy in your hustle and just enjoying this moment. Talk to us a little bit about the return to real in a practical sense. How are
Mm.
you applying it? And then how would you recommend others do the same?
Yeah, it's a big question,
Right.
and it's one that really it takes a book for me to unpack this.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll shortcut a few of the sort of ideas. So, core thesis of the book: what's good for our body is actually good for our business, and it has to do with a shift that's happening in the world and kind of this post AI world that we find ourselves in right now. And it's true because of a confluence of what I believe are three major forces happening in the world right now that's creating a sense of urgency for this in our lives. The first is an economic force. We're seeing this play out right now. Ray Dalio has done a great job of unpacking what he
Mm-hmm.
calls the big cycle.
Yep.
We're seeing really, we're on the back nine of US economic dominance in the world. So for those of us who are American, we've lived our entire lives in the ascent phase of the United States as a global superpower, but superpower is not forever. If you study history, there are cycles that take place, and all economic signs point to the fact that we're on the downswing. And so that's creating, I think, a sense of identity crisis among many Americans, certainly, and much of the Western world, because the next superpower, the most likely candidate, is China, which is a shift in sort of global dynamics. We have a debt crisis that is mounting in the United States. We're basically borrowing from our children and our grandchildren and our great grandchildren to satisfy the life that we've gotten used to here today at a global scale. So we have economic forces that are at play. We have environmental forces that are at play. We are seeing all sorts of economic forces from climate change to ecological destruction to extinction of species, that there's a sense of urgency to want to experience the natural beauty of this world, knowing that it may not be here forever. The world that we grew up in is unlikely to be the world that your young son and my boys will grow up in as when they become men. And so I think there's a sense of urgency there. And then there's certainly an existential crisis associated with AI, where we are left wondering what's our place in the world. We have technology
Mm-hmm.
that's able to do things that human beings were once superior at doing, and now you have technology that can do a better job of that. So we're asking ourselves, what's the point? Where does this leave me? Where does it leave my career? What does it leave what I'm doing? Who am I? Why do I matter? All of these questions start to emerge with the advent of AI. So it's this confluence of these three forces sort of hitting us all at once that's creating what is a predictable response in moments like this in history, which is this counter culture or counter revolutionary response.
Mm.
Go back to Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution was met with the Romantic movement. If we look at the mechanization of the early 20th century, it was met with the arts and crafts movement. So every major economic, technological shift that's happened in the last 500 years has been met with this counterculture of just, wait a second, is this all necessarily good? Yes, maybe in totality, industrialization is good for the standard of living for most human beings on planet Earth, but it comes with a cost. And so these forces right now are coming with a bit of a cost where we're starting to say, well, time out a second. Now, so with that as the backdrop, what is interesting is that I believe there's a shift that we should all be aware of. And this will kind of set the stage for our conversation.
Yeah.
And that is much of the last 2 decades of your time in business, my time in business, has been optimizing our businesses around a very specific neurotransmitter. In this case, the neurotransmitter dopamine, which
Mm.
is the reward loops. So everything from the shade of red that Facebook uses for an alert on your iPhone to the sounds that we hear when we're interacting with an app have all been built around these dopamine-based feedback loops. And so dopamine has sort of been the hero neurotransmitter that's gotten all the headlines. But it's been at the expense of another neurotransmitter that I believe is actually more important and what we should be optimizing not only our lives for, but our businesses for in this next era. And that neurotransmitter is oxytocin.
Mm.
Oxytocin is the neurotransmitter of trust. And unlike dopamine, to elicit oxytocin, which is a feel-good hormone, it's one of the four sort of feel-good neurotransmitters in our brain, along with serotonin and endorphins. Oxytocin, in order to elicit it, it requires presence. It requires physical touch. It requires an in-person experience, and you can't hack it in the same way that you can hack that dopamine response in people's brains.
Mm.
So what does that mean exactly? Well, this craving that you and I were talking about, this desire for more real, to be tethered to reality, to remove ourselves from digital abstraction and simulation and living life by proxy, but actually getting our hands in the dirt. What does that actually mean in a neuroscientific standpoint? Well, what it means is that we have this massive worldwide oxytocin deficit
Mm.
that people don't have the words to describe what it means, like you and I were talking about before we hopped on this conversation. But what people recognize, they realize that something is missing
Mm.
in their life. And so one of the reasons we're more digitally connected than ever and yet feel more alone, more isolated with this loneliness epidemic is because of this very thing,
Mm.
because we're missing this. So the question then becomes, okay, so how do we reorient our lives, maybe let the pendulum swing back in the opposite direction to recalibrate things around this, both in our life and in our business, to both satisfy the demand for this that exists in the world right now, and also live a life that's better for us. It's healthy for us. It's in alignment with everything that you write about in your book and you teach about in your work. So anyways, I'll pause there because
Yeah.
there are additional layers and layers to this, but this is a good maybe starting point for this conversation.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I love, again, how you are able to articulate these macro concepts into the micro application. And, you mentioned those three different verticals: the economic, the environmental, and then the existential,
Mm,
these, uh, I guess, factors that are changing the landscape.
mm,
And I totally echo the sentiment on each. And it's like, I think sometimes at least for me personally, I'm like, well, okay, well, how do I fit into this massive global shift that
right,
is taking place with AI, with freaking crypto or, tariffs or superpower, changing hands, or like, it's overwhelming. I think for some people, it's like, I just want to pay my mortgage and,
right,
take care of my family and maybe go drink a beer with the boys and golfing. It's like,
right.
I feel like most people, at least, are overwhelmed by the concepts, but you are able to distill it and articulate it into, you know, simpler principles to then apply. Specifically, I want to double click on the dopamine versus oxytocin, because I think
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
yeah,
You know, we have been, as you said, optimizing for dopamine, but what the trend is showing in the future, we need to optimize for oxytocin.
mm,
Go a little deeper there for us. How does that apply to the happy hustlers out there
mm,
right now who are building businesses? They want the three freedoms, right? Creative, time, and financial freedom. That's what we all crave as happy hustlers.
mm.
How do we apply this knowledge of this trend to, solve for oxytocins in our business?
Totally. It's such a great question. And I think what it means is we have to adopt a new playbook.
Mm.
So like for example, there are a few principles that I'll speak to, principles that I go into detail in the book around what this actually means. And by the way, this is something that I've approached from a place of curiosity and inquiry, not from the place of I have all the answers. So this is not going to be a didactic or prescriptive, like this is exactly what it should be.
Mm.
It's more about these are the questions that I reflect on. And I come from as a digital entrepreneur. I spent 2 decades building digital businesses.
Hmm.
And my last business, I decided to sell that business. And through a period of deep reflection, I asked myself, why is it that I wanted to sell this business? Well, what I realized was that I started hating my business. And as a
Mm.
result, I started hating myself. Like I started hating the
Mm.
human being that I had become, that I'd let happen, not overnight, but just with one small decision after another. I'd created this life that was effectively a prison for myself. And it was like, I'm supposed to be winning the game here, but what game am I actually winning? So
Right.
I had kind of like this moment of crisis myself, which led me down this place, and pursuing this life of return to real. Like I, was in the middle of Austin, Texas, and Silicon Valley of the South, like in the center of it all, and my wife and I, in the middle of it all, when I kind of made this decision, we sold our house, we put everything into storage, we sold one of our cars, we road tripped across the country up to Vermont, nothing but a dream and a vision,
Let's
to
go.
get into nature and to start a farm as a family, with my wife and our two boys. So like I've been on a very personal journey myself. So I just want to preface that by saying I don't necessarily have all the answers, but I have some questions. So one of the questions, so how do we get more oxytocin into our lives? It's a lot of what you do in your business, the mastermind retreats that you take your members into, time in nature. So one of the principles of Return to Real is more time with God-made things, less time with man-made things. So it's easy to spend an entire day, an entire week, an entire month spending every waking moment of your life interacting with something man-made. It can be a device that you hold in your hand. It can be the computer that you interact with, the furniture that you're sitting on. Even the food that we eat is not straight out of the ground. It's a reduction of something. It's not the actual thing. It's made into some food that comes in a bag or in a box. So what does that mean? Well, I don't know the answer, but questions to reflect on. Is it 5 minutes every day that our mutual friend Ali Jafarian likes to say, touch earth before touching a screen? Wake up. And that's, by the way, a practice that I encourage anyone, just try it for a week.
Say it again.
Touch earth before touching a screen.
Yeah.
So first thing in the morning, when you wake up, first thing that you do before you go to the bathroom, before you brush your teeth, before you make your coffee or your tea, before you reach for your phone on your bedside table next to you, resist all temptation. Walk outside, irrespective of the temperature of the weather, barefoot, and step outside your front door and touch the first piece of earth. That's not concrete. It's not asphalt. It's grass. It's dirt. It's something that comes from nature, not from man. Touch that. And whatever time of day, I wake up pretty early. So when I do this, I look up at the heavens. Oftentimes it's a clear sky and I see the stars up above, and it just grounds me.
Oh, yeah.
And in a minute or two of starting your day like this will shift your entire perspective. The problems that you're trying to solve in your business that are big, suddenly you have a new perspective, a fresh way of looking at it. So more time with God-made things, less time with man-made things. What does that mean? Well, for some of us, it might mean 5 minutes touching the earth to start the day. For others, it might mean doing what Bill Gates does, taking a 30-day sabbatical, unplugging from the internet, from technology, and stepping away from things.
Yeah.
Just so you can have a fresh perspective on what comes next. Getting your body and your brain back in tune with its natural physiology and the biology of natural cycles that exist in the world, the seasonality of life. So I don't know what the answer is, but what I do know is that if we don't live a life where this is intentionally baked into our existence, it will not happen.
Amen.
The default is you'll wake up every single day reaching for your phone, checking your email first thing in the morning if you do not make a shift. I'll give you another example of what this looks like. Another principle in Return to Real is the best things in life don't scale. So what does that mean? The best things in life, a hug from your 2-year-old boy to start your day. You can't scale that, man.
No.
But that's what life is all about.
Yes.
That's what we live for. So with that principle in mind, the thing to think about how to apply this in a business context is, what are the things that you are doing in your business that inherently don't scale? And yet you do them anyway. Here's why this is so important. This is so important because in this oxytocin era, this post-AI era that we're entering into, this, I believe, is the last true moat that we have in business. Technology is no longer a moat. You and I could come up with a really cool piece of technology right now. We could vibe code it, use AI, some platform to build the tool, create something that's pretty awesome. And someone could come in, start using it and saying, this is awesome. I want to build one of these too. and use the same technology to replicate what it is that we're doing.
Right.
So unless you're a $1 trillion tech company with all the resources in the world to do something incredibly special, for most of us as small business owners, technology is no longer a moat that can be overcome.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Apologies for interrupting your programming. But I have to tell you, the best investment you can make in yourself is one in which helps you acquire skills. You've probably heard people talk about, oh, just invest in yourself and you'll be successful. Yes, that's true to a degree, but you have to invest in skills that will ultimately help you achieve your desired results. And I think one of the best skills one can possess, be it an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, is the sales sword. Really knowing how to sell, utilizing pressure-free persuasion, which will make you more money and more impact. Now, if you want to know how to sell more efficiently and effectively, I just launched a sales course called The Proven Roadmap Process to Selling Millions of Dollars and helping you to increase your conversions guaranteed. And you can get access to this new sales course that The Happy Hustle is launching at thehappyhustle.com/sales. And if you act fast, you'll get it at the lowest price it'll ever be available, because we are launching it and we want to gain amazing testimonials and social proof to further share this knowledge. So if you act fast, you can get it at the lowest price it'll ever be. That's at thehappyhustle.com/sales. Now let's get back to this episode.
So what are the true moats in business? One of them, I believe the last one, is doing things that decidedly do not scale. Because that is what your competition is not going to be willing to do. Your competitors are going to look at that and they're going to be asking the age-old business question, but does it scale? How do we scale this?
Right.
You can't scale a hug with your 2-year-old.
No.
You can't scale 10 guys in a mastermind in Montana out in the wilderness having a conversation around a campfire. You can't invite 1 million people to that experience.
No, you can't.
Intimacy of 10 guys or 20 guys around that campfire is what makes it special. And yet that is what your competition is not going to be willing to do. So the question, again, it's not an answer, but the question is, in your business, what are the things? Because you can't do this for everything. Like, you can't be unscalable in everything that you do. You have to be strategic in the few things that you insist on preserving in your business that don't scale, because they give you your competitive advantage, because they separate you from everybody else.
Man, oh man, some gold right there, Ryan. I am so a fan of pretty much everything you said, specifically more time with God made things, like less time with man-made things. That is just profound in its simplicity, but really hits. And I just think our entire human race would be better off if that was the case. It's something we have lost track of. And I do believe we've gotten diminishing returns from technology, just like with anything, too much working out, you get diminishing returns. It's been a good thing and it's had its peak. And now it's actually, you see the suicide and mental health rates skyrocketing. I think of parents who aren't being intentional with their kids and their cell phone usage or screen time. Like, that negatively affects them. They don't know how to emotionally regulate. They don't know how to look a person in their eyes anymore, or ask a girl to go to the dance in person, not through a screen. Like, we're just missing a lot of things.
There's a whole cottage industry emerging to teach those skills to young people who didn't grow up in an environment where they were forced to learn those skills themselves. Right. So like, there are people now, like, one of the things I challenge, like, I was just in the car with my son, and he has this skill because I've challenged him with this. But like, for example, we're trying to figure out if one of our country stores here in Vermont was open for lunch. He said, I can just go to the website and figure out. I was like, no, call them up. And I want you to have the conversation with them and say, like, hey, how late are you serving sandwiches until? Hey, we're on the way. Can you hold off? Just like all that, have that conversation, which you and I would, oh, that's simple. But for, a 13-year-old boy who can, text and use the internet and chat GPT for anything, those are the skills that are in short supply in
Right.
the younger generation.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are. And they're also going to be increasingly in demand as a
Mm,
result. The individual who can conversate in that capacity.
totally.
So I love that you said that, and that you're teaching those principles to your sons, and it's inspiring, man. I love what Ali said: touch earth before touching the screen. I
Mm.
was grounding this morning with my son in the grass, and it's just, it's even better if you could touch earth while going to the bathroom, where you can take a pee in your yard, or like, in Montana, like that's my signature staple of a solid place to live, is if you could take a leak and no one's going to call the cops.
It's great. Look at it's there's so many benefits to it. So number one, like there's so much fertility in the urine that we waste that can
There you
actually
go.
go into the soil. It's great fertilizer, number one. So being able
Yeah.
to urinate, take a pee outside, that's number one. Number two, if you live in the country, it's your perimeter defense. So I've got three boys in our house, me and my two kids.
Yeah.
So we're strategic in where we pee to create a perimeter around, like for example, where our chickens are.
There you
Uh,
go.
the raccoons away from the hens because they'll smell the urine around that. So I know maybe it's like TMI, but like there's real benefit to it as well.
Oh yeah, man. Oh
Yeah, man.
yeah. Well, and then you said one concept that I really, again, want to hit on for all the happy hustlers out there. Like, the best things in life don't scale.
Mm,
That concept alone can change everything for your business. If you, like, I think about I don't know who said the old adage, different is better than better,
mm,
but if you're different with your business, if maybe you have a policy where you onboard a new client and like you fly to see them, and you're
mm,
like, hey, I want to take you to lunch, like that's not going to scale. We
mm,
have like a gifting box that we give and stuff like that. That's just a little unexpected. People love surprise and delight,
mm,
so just give them that, and you watch what happens to your customer retention and LTV, right? Your lifetime value. And it's just very important, I think, for everyone to think about these concepts and how they apply. I
mm.
know in your book you get into, deeper concepts and the application of all of it. But if you have someone out there who is going to read the book and you just had to say, I want them to take away one thing, like one thing that is potentially going to change their trajectory, what would that thing be?
Follow the contrarian voice of your heart.
Mm,
What does that mean exactly? I've had moments in my life where I have taken risks and it's changed everything. And there are moments that I like to say that most people in life are afraid to give up good in order to go after great.
mm,
Most of us have a good life. Like it's not like we're living in a cardboard box on the side of the road and we're homeless. Most people have a good life, but it's the golden handcuffs that keep us tethered to the life that we're living right now
hmm
and prevent us from taking these risks. And I think oftentimes we have this voice inside of us that if we really listen to it, we know what we need to do. It's what our heart is telling us to do. So for me, for example, I um, had an experience back in 2021. We went to sell uh, the business I was running at the time, and we had a life changing offer. It was a $70 million offer to buy our business. We put our business to market. We were working with an
wow.
investment bank, took it to market, $70 million offer to buy the company. And we spent close to a year in preparation and diligence. And after a year, about $1 million spent from the buyer to buy our business, the deal fell apart at the 11th hour.
Oh,
And this is not how the story was supposed to end, in my
right,
opinion.
right,
This is not like I'd done
right.
everything right. 7-time Inc. 5000 fastest growing company. We'd done $100 million in revenue. We had tens of thousands of satisfied customers. We did like everything, right. But what I realized in that time is like there is, whether you want to call it good fortune, luck, there are circumstances that are somewhat out of your control. So when we took the business to market, there was a macroeconomic shift that happened in the middle of our transaction. So this is 2021 into 22. Russia invaded the Ukraine.
Right.
That was elicited fears of like World War III. We didn't know
Right.
exactly what was going to happen, how big it was going to escalate at that time. Markets responded by crashing. Crypto markets crashed, capital markets crashed. And so it created a lot of fear and economic headwinds in the market at this time. So long story short, the private equity firm, which was actually the firm that bought Alex Hormozi's company, and they were looking to make a second transaction. They were looking to buy a company in our space. They had identified us as the company that they wanted to buy, decided to pull out. And they put pencils down on all transactions that they were looking at, all companies that they were in the middle of doing some M&A work with. And so kind of said, okay, crap, that's all right. We'll go back to the market and see what other interest is there. But because of these macroeconomic headwinds, virtually the entire M&A market dried up. And it was one of these things where, okay, I spent basically the better part of a decade in a sprint. I was hustling. I was happy some of the time. It was a lot of hustle. And I kind of had this moment of reflection where I asked myself, like, do I want to do this for another decade? Like, is this what I want to do? And what I saw was at the time I had two boys who I could see how little time I had left with them at home. And I saw that there was this window in my life. I have this expression that windows open and windows close, but windows don't last forever. Like with your 2-year-old right now, there are windows, like there's stuff that you're gonna be able to do with him now.
Right.
And those windows will close and they will never reopen again. New windows will open, like there'll be new opportunities to do new and different things, but like there'll be a time not so far into the future where your son won't want to sleep with you.
Right.
He won't want to cuddle with you. He won't want to take a nap with you on your chest. Like that window will close. So I saw this window closing and I asked myself, what do I want to optimize my life for? And for me, it was very simple. I want to optimize my life to suck the marrow out of this season of life while I still have these 2 boys at home with me. And so I took a bit of time off after the transaction didn't take place. And I decided to spend a few weeks living and working on a farm in the Mad River Valley of Vermont. And I was living in a tent with just a backpack of stuff. And when I was there staring out at the Green Mountains, my heart told me, this is where you're meant to be. And it wasn't a rational decision, but it was that whisper that I decided to listen to. And while I was there, true story, we had talked about, my wife and I, possibly selling our house, but we didn't yet put it on the market. With 1 bar of service in the middle of the Green Mountains of Vermont, I called my wife. I said, let's do it. Let's put the house on the market. Let's see what happens. Got a text back later that day. Less than 24 hours later, the house sells. All cash, full price offer, 14-day close. I have to rush back from Vermont to Austin.
Damn.
We put everything that we own into storage, sell one of our cars. We load up my truck, 1 suitcase each, one for the kid, one for each of us, and a dog.
Yeah.
We road trip our way across the country to Vermont, and we had nowhere to stay, but we found an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And we moved from Airbnb to Airbnb for about a year before we landed on the site that we're on here today. We call it our family's grand adventure. And that's exactly what it was. It was just a journey into the unknown, but we had faith, we had a vision, and we knew that if we persisted, that we would do something special. And I think most people are afraid to do that. Most people they say, yeah, that's great for you, Carrie or Ryan or whomever, you could do it, but I can never do it because all the reasons, I've got health insurance and healthcare. My doctor, I can't leave my doctor. I've got, my kid's school. And there are a million reasons why you can't do that. And if you believe those reasons, then it will hold you back from doing it. But there's another story you can tell yourself, because this is all just a story. It's all just whatever bullshit you want to feed your brain. What story do you want to believe? It's not objective reality. It's just subjective reality. There's another story out there, which is this journey into the unknown could be the greatest thing that ever happens to you and your family. And that's what I chose to believe. And so we're living the story right now. And this return to real has been a very personal journey for me. It's one that I hope just telling this story inspires people to do whatever version of this is for them, whether it's moving to the mountains of Montana or an island in the Caribbean or road tripping across the country with their family or whatever the thing is. that your contrarian voice in your heart is whispering to you right now, but maybe you're afraid to take the leap.
I love it, man. Follow the contrarian voice of your heart. That really is, I think, one of the best things that I've heard in recent memory. And it is, man, I'm not blowing smoke. I just, it could go so many different ways for so many different people if you think about it for you, because it's different. It's for every single person that's going to mean something unique. And that's what I think. Start small. Maybe you can't right this moment do what Ryan and his family did to sell the house and move. Maybe you can't, but start small and make headway, right? Get yourself back to real and watch your joy and your happiness skyrocket. And as a result, probably your business and your career in the process. It's very beautiful and well said, man. I know people are out there like, all right, I need to get a copy of this book, Ryan. When does this thing come out? And also, is there anything we can consume from you on these topics in the interim?
It's a great question. So my target publication date is October 2025. This is either going to age well or age very poorly, depending on how things land. I'm hustling
Yeah.
to get this book written as we speak. In the
Yeah.
meantime, I write a personal weekly private email newsletter called The Digital Contrarian.
Mm-hmm.
And when I write this, when I say I personally write it myself, there's no team of writers, there's no AI. I often spend somewhere between 12 and 14 hours to put together one of these pieces. They're deeply researched.
Mm.
It's a mix of personal observation and oftentimes scientific research, like, for example, the oxytocin versus dopamine relationship,
Mm-hmm.
the forces that are at play. So a lot of the concepts that are making their way into the book are first introduced in this newsletter. It's the biggest thing that I'm focusing on right now, and it's the best way to get maybe a deeper window into the work that I'm pursuing right now. So, anyways, if this has been a resonant conversation and this
Mm.
is like something that you want to dive deeper into, I'd invite anyone to subscribe at or check things out at thedigitalcontrarian.com.
Yeah, definitely check that out. Thedigitalcontrarian.com. Great domain, by the way. We'll link it up in the show notes as well if you don't know how to spell contrarian, because it's a $5 word for sure. Maybe 4, but still, it's up there. Yeah, but it's great, man. Very, again, profound and inspiring stuff that you're working on, and yeah, just honored to dive into it with you and to spend some time today chatting. If I may, I'd love to put you through our traditional happy hustle rapid fire round
All
questions,
right,
and then
let's
we'll
do
wrap
it.
this interview up, man. So this is just where I ask random things and then you answer honestly, first thing that comes to mind. Are
All right,
you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, favorite food, go.
Chicken tenders.
Oh, from your own chickens, I bet, too.
Right.
There you go. Favorite movie.
Gattaca.
Favorite book.
Oh gosh. Crime and Punishment.
What's your spirit animal?
First thing that came to my mind was frog.
I never heard frog. That's great. Best business advice.
Best business advice. Gosh, to put it on a postage stamp,
Right.
I would say it's make decisions that put you into a category of one. To complete the quote that you had shared earlier, I attribute it to Sally Hogshead. Different is better than better, but only is best. Become a category of one, and you'll never go hungry again.
Damn, that's good. Yeah, I do think you're right. I think that is Sally's, isn't it?
You may have adopted it from somewhere
Yeah.
else. I always
Yeah.
give her attribution. 'Cause
Yeah. I love to give credit where credit's due, because I know there's a lot of thieves out there in IP land. So,
Oh yeah.
What is a happy hustle hack for your health? I always like to ask, something uniquely Ryan.
Yeah. Gosh, I could go deep on this. So, what do I want to speak to here? I mean, right before I came on this interview, I did a nature's cold plunge, the way nature intended it.
Yeah.
So a naked swim in a natural body of water, ocean, pond, a lake.
Yeah.
I think there are few things that are as good for you as shocking the system with something like that.
Yeah. So true. What about a happy hustle hack for your money? Something, again, uniquely Ryan, something maybe that you do to save, invest, or spend wisely.
Yeah, great question. So I think what's most important is that you have what's called an investment policy statement, which is basically
Mm,
your thesis written down that explains why you make the investment decisions that you make. And that can evolve over time, but by actually having a written set of principles that guide your decision making in the investment world, it helps you make principle based decisions as opposed to irrational, sort of in the moment decisions that we can often fall a victim to. So, have a written investor policy statement that articulates your investment principles.
yeah, that's great. What about a happy hustle hack for your spirituality? I'm a religious mutt. My dad was Catholic, my mom was Jewish. I just believe in a higher power. Do you
Mm.
have any specific ways that you connect to a higher power that, again, is maybe uniquely Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's unique, but for me, I've always felt like my church is in nature. That's
Hmm.
when I feel most connected to God.
Same.
When I'm at the top of a mountain after a long hike, if I'm deep in the woods, if I'm, back floating in the pond, looking up at the heavens above. I try to see as many sunrises as possible. I think that's one that we can all adapt. There's something special
Yeah.
about waking up before the sun has come up and seeing the sunrise over the horizon, and just the gratitude that it brings, the awe and wonder in the ordinary and everyday that it just evokes in yourself. So for me, my spiritual practice is, one of your happy hustler principles, which is time spent in nature,
Yeah.
connecting with God.
Love that. I know this rapid fire round's going long, but now I feel called to ask you a happy hustle hack for your relationship. As an entrepreneur and a father and
Mm.
just a human, it's sometimes, yeah, it's tough to manage everything, all these buckets of life. Do you have something, again, uniquely Ryan, that you do to keep that love thriving?
Everything my wife and I have done together, we've been together for 25 years. Everything that
Mm,
we've done together has been at the core of our relationship. We started our business together. We started our family together. We started our farm together. Before we got on this interview, she and I were working out in the fields together in partnership. So I think find someone that is not only your best friend, a great friend, because that will carry you through when the
mhm.
romance is when you get past that part of your relationship, but someone that you work really well with, someone that you could partner up with and do something special, whether it's business or a project at home or something else.
Mm,
So for me, that's been, um, in my N of one, because I've only been married once, I've only had one, major relationship.
that's
I
awesome.
found that to be, central to our lives.
Yeah. Well said, man. Well said. Three things you're most grateful for today.
Henry Bradley and Tylene.
Love it. And if you had a billboard for the world to see with your last piece of content on there, what's that billboard read?
Um, I actually wrote about courage for the rest of us, why most people are afraid to give up good to go after great.
Mm. Crush that rapid fire round, Ryan. And man, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you, brother, for sharing your love, your light, your wisdom, your naked cold plunges, your contrarian thinking, and just the beautiful statements that you've bestowed upon the happy hustlers out there. Really, man, I feel like we'll be hopefully lifelong bros because I feel really connected to you, man. And
Yeah, I
uh,
said it earlier. You and I have been
yeah,
living like parallel
yeah,
lives in many ways, and probably more ways than we even might realize in this moment.
right.
So it's
Yeah.
an honor, man. I'm so grateful that you invited me to do this, and I'd love to, do it again when it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I just appreciate you. And I just want to shout out everything you're doing. Definitely check out his older books, because they're phenomenal. The Ask Method is just a go to for if you want to pinpoint your perfect target avatars in
Mhm.
business and ultimately crush it. And in this new book, I'm extremely excited about it. It's very unique too. Like what you're writing about. You hear a lot of personal development books, AI book, but I've never heard anyone talking about the things you're talking about. So check out thedigitalcontrarian.com to get on the newsletter list and be soaking up that knowledge until the book comes out, hopefully on that Q4 or end of Q3 date. We'll give you some slack there if not, because I know that books are a biatch and launching them ain't no easy thing, especially if you want to do it right. But anyway, man, I just want to thank you again. And I always like to just tie things up with a bow, if you can, a rallying cry, a call to action, will you? Everything we talked about today, what do you really want to leave the happy hustlers with?
Yeah, last words that I'll leave with are as follows. Look, um, in life, in business, you don't have to get it perfect. You do have to get it going, and the best time to
Mm.
get it going is right here, right now, today. So I would say take one thing that we talked about in this conversation that you feel maybe inspired or moved by, and put it into action in a small way today, while you've got energy, while you've got excitement around it.
Well said, man. Where do you show up most online? Is there a place like Instagram or LinkedIn where people could follow you direct, or is
Yeah,
the
I'm
newsletter
on
the
I'm
best?
on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. So any of those places, search my name, Ryan Levesque. It's a crazy French name, Levesque, and you'll find the bearded plaid shirt guy from Vermont, doing his thing.
Let Let's go. And PSG just won. I know you're a soccer player.
Yep.
Did you watch the game?
I didn't. I've got
Yeah.
two boys that are playing multiple soccer teams. I
Yeah.
find much of my life
Yeah.
is shuttling these kids from one game to another when I'm not doing work there on the farm right now. So
Right on.
yeah, I've got a fair amount of soccer
Right.
in my life. No, I've got one who's a Barcelona fan, and
Nice.
then another one who's a Chelsea fan. So
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I lived in Barca for a year and
really,
I saw Messi at the gas station. I played
oh,
with a
what?
fourth division team over there. Yeah, it was epic, dude. So yeah, we could riff on that. But yeah, yeah, good for the French. Their team won this big tournament in soccer world, for the record, if you're not familiar. But anyway, man, final question I like to ask all
Yeah.
my guests is, what does happy hustling mean to you?
I think it's everything we talked about here today. It's that right combination, which I think for all of us, it's what is the right effective dose for you?
Mm,
And that's I think, a lifelong quest of recalibration and optimization around what happy hustling means for all of us.
love it. Ryan Levesque, y'all. Mic drop. Appreciate you guys so much for watching and listening. We are out. Peace and love, everybody.